Everyone, welcome back to our weekly synopsis with Paul and McKenna. We have been this week at Climate Transform sort of busily working on VCM, which is what we will talk about in just a second. But we've got a couple of things I'm doing actually next week with two great partners of ours, the Rocky Mountain Institute and Blackthorn Ventures.
Yeah, I would love to hear what you're excited for as far as their talk. They're talking about decarbonizing aviation with sustainable drop-in fuel alternatives. So what has your experience with that been so far?
So let me take a big step back and talk about the elephant in the room, and I'm going to square the circle very quickly. Anyone who saw the John Oliver thing on HBO on his show last Sunday where he shit canned, no other way to describe it, the carbon offset ecosystem. Look, I mean, we could talk about that for an hour, but I think that I disagree with much of what he said. He even talked about the developmental benefits and the like. But the one thing he did do, which I'm a big supporter of, is he took the airline industry to task about using offsets as a tool to go to net zero. Now, the CEO of Ryanair was shown in an interview, and he came across, Michael O'Leary, I think his name is, came across as just, it couldn't have come off any worse. And look, if you're on John Oliver, if John Oliver targets you in your little segment of the world, you're in for a hard time because they're going to find every interview where you look bad and you screw up. But look, I do think the one thing that I want to sort of bringing this back to sustainable aviation fuel is the airline industry does talk a lot of shit in regards to its net zero targets because, as we stand today, what carbon offsets are a bridge to a decarbonised future and nothing more. They are part of the process, right? Because in many industries, and airlines are a perfect example, the technologies just don't exist to decarbonise. Right, and what we'll do when we talk with Cyril Yee and Sam Latevsky from RMI and the report that they did on sustainable aviation fuel is talk about how hard this actually is. So as we stand today, 0.1%, so 10 litres out of every 1,000 litres that is burned in global air travel is what is called SAF, or sustainable aviation fuel. And that could be, it's biofuel, it could be e-fuels, which is effectively using hydrogen into kerosene, into e-kerosene and the like, which is again is a very expensive process. Like waste products from waste food products, these sort of things are another source of SAF. Algae is another source. None of this stuff's scalable. Well, that's not true. The e-fuel side of things is potentially scalable if you can get the cost down from $8 to $10 a gallon, $8 to $10 a litre. Sorry, right now to something much more reasonable. So I think that this interview is going to be a sort of an eye opener for people who in a lot of ways we need to hold the airline industry to task because for someone who flies United Airlines a lot, like pretty much every week. If I see another interview with Scott Kirby, the CEO of United, come on telling me how green he is, because it's not true, and it's because it's like saying the oil industry is becoming green. Well, no, it's not, and just because you buy offsets doesn't give you a pass. And look, I'm sure that that Scott Kirby and Michael O'Leary and other airline executives around the world are doing their best and spending billions of dollars with Boeing and Airbus and Bombardier and other global airline manufacturers to produce hydrogen planes and battery-oriented smaller craft and all this sort of stuff. But we're nowhere near that yet, right? And what this interview will do will come close to that'll these guys, having read their article, read their report, will drive that point home.
Exactly. And because people are saying, electrifying the whole process is just, out of reach at this point. So having something like their sustainable drop-in fuel is something more accessible and easier to wrap our heads around as far as when that timeline is and scalability, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And on the John Oliver thing too, it's interesting because all of these companies that are being affected by what had been said are now coming up with these responses, and there's like this burden of, how do we portray what we're doing versus what is being put out there. So it'll be interesting to see those responses as well, and I'm sure we'll highlight some of them.
Yeah, and so we did our first recorded interview for our VCM event on Tuesday, and that was with the Vera's CEO David Antonioli. And it was just around the time it came out. I literally got emails. I got emails with links to YouTube for the interview, that morning. And David and I talked about this. And the reality is that they didn't talk about the developmental benefits of all this stuff. But as I said to Dave, when the cameras weren't rolling, there's nothing you can do. You can't take up this is HBO. HBO did Game of Thrones. What are you going to, unless you've got environmental dragons who can take on HBO, you can't win.
No, and they know that. They know that. That's why
they do know that, and Maggie Kim at Gold Standard knows that, and they'll be preparing rebuttals, and because when you can't win, unfortunately, in these things, and it's a shame. Look, there's been no industry, no investment thesis, no asset class has ever not had bad actors.
Yeah,
it happens, and it's like saying that the housing market does have bad actors. It does. Mm-hmm. Equity markets have bad actors. They do. Credit, etc. They all have people who've done dodgy things, and the carbon space is no different. I think the one big advantage the carbon space does have, and the offset space does have, is it does have a lot of people and a lot of companies that are mission driven.
Yeah,
and I think that's really important. That's really important. I think there's a lot of people whose hearts and minds are moving in the right direction, which gives me a lot of hope. No segue here. I was about to say no segue into Black.
Well, there is a segue. Even venture companies with missions are investing in these companies that are helping our carbon industry and everything, such as Blackhorn Ventures.
That was a segue. It sounded like a bad segue. It was, some companies do bad things. Here's Blackhorn Ventures.
Oh,
These guys are awesome. So they're awesome. And Blackhorn Ventures is a Colorado-based venture capital firm that looks at old, boring industry and is revitalizing and optimizing their supply chains. They have done, I think, over 50 investments in, I think this is their fifth fund they're on, something like that. And so Melissa and Philip, who are the two founders of the company, are going to be on with me next week talking about sort of supply chain optimization. And it goes back to the point that McKenna, you and I talked about last week on this video and previously on many occasions. This is not about $1 or $2 trillion opportunities. This is about thousands of $billion opportunities. And whether it's drive shafts on trucks or white coffee cups, whatever that supply chain is, there's a decarbonization and a sustainability process to each and every one of them, and that's what companies like Blackhorn Ventures are doing. They're going into these boring industrial, heavy industrial companies, and changing the ways that they do things. Hopefully this is going to be a catalyst for us to be able to interview a bunch of their portfolio companies as well, and this is going to be supply chain optimization is going to be a huge part of what we do at Climate Transform going forward, based on we have to change the ways we do business in thousands and thousands of industries, and companies like Blackhorn Ventures are sort of going to be front and center of that. So that's really interesting. And just so guys, just get you out of here, just a little update on VCM. I think we're close to 70 speakers now, something there or thereabouts. I frankly have lost count. We're in the sort of the herding cats phase of all of this, where we're sort of doing all our reviews, and we've been we've done 3 sort of panel reviews in the last today. And the only thing I can tell you is that we've got some really smart people who are going to be talking at this. Whether it's on issues like on Article 6, whether it's on transparency, whether it's individual companies. I did something last night with Rich Gilmore, who's the CEO of Carbon Growth Partners, which is a Melbourne, Australia-based carbon asset manager. We're doing a whole thing about demystifying the carbon markets, and Rich has got more views and more opinions on this stuff than you care to imagine. So these are all things that we're looking at. So jump on the site, climatetransform.com for registration. McKenna, what did I miss? What else did we miss this week?
No, that's it. Lots of meetings, lots of excitement around, what is the audience going to bring to the VCM event too. All their questions are going to be so rightfully answered at this event. So I hope they, bring their curiosity.
Yeah. So if you've got any questions, just send them through. Send them through McKenna or I to our emails. We'll make sure they're asked. And as I say, climatetransform.com has all the details of registration. So McKenna, have a good week, and everyone will chat to you all shortly.
Thank you. Bye.